cafe anyway.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
I ended up doing another one. Look at that. Welcome to Mike's Daily Podcast. Somewhere in Podcastro Valley today.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
Episode 2149. 2149. How are you doing today? Are you fine? Fine. Good. Hey, I was having this day where there was rain and hail. It was insane. I'm like, look at this. Wow. We actually get a little bit of weather here in
Mike's Daily Podcast.
Bay Area. How cool is that? So last podcast, I got a little bit
Mike's
down
Daily
on a certain type
Podcast
of person.
Yeah!
That might be a little bit down these days and going through the stages of denial, of grief, rather. And one of those stages is denial. Let's see. And then there's, what's that other thing? Acceptance is at the end. It starts with denial, ends with acceptance. In between, you have anger. You have, what is it? When you're trying to compromise or trying to negotiate. There's that phase, and then there's the phase where depression. Yes, depression's involved with the stages of grief, and sounds like a lot of primarily male Republicans are going through that right now. And so the denial thing is at the beginning, and oh boy, there's a heavy load of that. And oh, how did all these votes magically appear? Well, the postman showed up with them. The votes, and there you go. That's what happens. And as they dig deeper and deeper into it, of course, they're going to not listen to the facts. They're going to listen to the Breitbart. They're going to listen to the people that kowtow to that wonderful craziness that they want to keep believing, because that's what we do. We listen to our own echo chambers in this world that we live in. So, unfortunately, I don't see it ending anytime soon, their belief system changing. And that includes...
And here's today's podcast picture.
The number one fellow they're trying to defend. But that's how it is, and yikes. Hey, the podcast picture today, let's just make it something good. Dude. Something that will uplift you. Something that will take you away from this. How about a podcast picture that has to do with food? Maybe something yummy. I've been cooking a lot and taking pictures of that. There's something calming. You know, when you look at food versus eating it. Or those shows, Basil. You talk about someone that loved food. Right to the bitter end. He was eating. He was going nuts with stuff I'd make. Mike, give me some of that. He loved it. He's a dog. But he had a great appetite right up to the end. I would love to, maybe we'll do a picture with the eggs, or with this delicious, I had this amazing pumpkin soup from a Thai restaurant last night. My lovely lady friend got it for me. It was so good. It was like this, it was a little bit spicy. It made me cry a little bit. And then we proceeded to watch the documentary about, what is his name? Oh gosh, I've lost access to his last name was Mercado, the guy that did astrology. You already know who it is. It was on Netflix. Walter Mercado, huge in Puerto Rico, and then he became this national phenomenon. Actually, he was known around the world. And he just passed away last year. I didn't know that. But he was all about trying to empower people, and he used astrology to try and make people feel better about themselves. He reminded me a lot about Trump. Because Trump and him, I mean, when you watch a documentary, you see a lot of similarities. They were both very much into themselves, very much had created this world and this belief system, and the people close to them followed them like you couldn't. They were the strongest followers, the fans. Walter Mercado's fans. Wow. But he was all about giving back to the community, about giving. He believed in everyone should, I don't know, that they should reach their full potential. There was something of motivational speaker involved with him, but it was all about astrology. And he would say your astrological, how did he say? Sagittario. And my lovely lady friend will have to talk about him more because she grew up with him. I never heard of him until the Netflix thing. And then I found out, oh, wow, all these people know who he is. So we watched that last night. It was fantastic. So maybe the delicious dinner I was eating as I was watching this interesting fella that I had never heard of before. Or we'll go back a year ago to a quieter, happier time. Yes, 2009, in October of that, November. Gosh, we're in November. It feels like, lately it feels like December around here these days. But in December, or November rather, I can't get used to the dark. It gets so dark so fast these days. Yes, I know you're saying this podcast is lacking and needs a little bit more oomph because what else are we going to talk about today? But I think we'll get used to some Christmas lights. Maybe we'll put that in the podcast picture. I have suddenly realized I do not have that many good podcast pictures left. I've posted so many of them. There'll be a surprise. You'll see it at mikesdailypodcast.com. So the show, Mike's Daily Podcast, had 9 downloads this week. Wow! This according to Blueberry. That's Blue with BRRY. They are a podcasting statistics company. And apparently I had 9 downloads. But overall, I have had 15,682. But I think I've been with Blueberry since 2011, so that doesn't say much. But yes. And with Spreaker, I'm up 16 downloads. 16 downloads altogether. So that's the type of underground podcast you are listening to right now as we go outside a cafe anyway, where we bring you Mike's Daily Podcast somewhere in Podcastro Valley. And on Podbean, yes, they come up with all kinds of clever names for the podcast services, don't they? Podbean, I am up 1 play. And I have 3 followers on Podbean. I think I'm probably 2 of them. So there you go. I also found out recently that one of my podcasts, so we're at episode 2149, an episode I did all the way back, episode 805, has been flagged by YouTube. Our community guidelines, they say, describe which content we allow and don't allow on YouTube. Your video, Mike's Daily Podcast number 805, News. It was called News. Back then, I didn't give the podcast these interesting names, these one-shot names like Kowtow or Modesty was the last one. Modesty, it's such a lonesome word. Anywho, 805 was flagged for us to review. Upon review, we've determined that it may not be suitable for all viewers and has been placed behind an age restriction. If you believe this was a mistake, we'd like to hear from you now. I would like to know what that podcast was about. Maybe there's a way in which I can play it for you. Urgent, Carter says. It's got to be something you crave so that you actually look forward to it. Download an app to your smartphone and you'll always have a book to listen to in the car or train. What in the heck was this one about? This podcast. Okay, let's go a little bit further into it and find out. Oh. What was I doing playing Outcast in the middle of my podcast? Outcast on my podcast, the Outcast podcast. Let's see what else we have.
Podcast picture.
See, best produced podcast. This one right here, podcastawards.com. The picture is of Basil the Boxer. It's actually a selfie of him. Well, wait, is that a selfie when you're not holding? Okay, very good questions, Mike. And we didn't see any of your nude body. Whoa. Too bad for you. Well, next show, Madame Rootabega apparently was nude or something. Okay, well, that FF episode was back in 2015 and has been flagged by the wonderful people at YouTube. And now I feel kind of like these conservative talk show hosts that are all like, I'm being discriminated against by Twitter and YouTube and Google and Facebook. They should allow me freedom of speech. You know what? No. Those companies are not owned by the government. They're owned by people, and they are businesses that need to make money, and publishing your stuff that makes them look bad is not in their best interest. So sorry, folks, but you will not get your stuff there. So back in 2000, when this last big, it was close, but this is not hanging chads. We actually have voting machines that work this time. Florida went to Trump, so there was no disputing Florida at all. It went to Trump. I don't know how close it was, but I know my mom lives in Florida now, and she definitely loves Trump. But back in 2000, I worked at a company down in Ventura, a radio station, and we had a guy named Norm. And Norm was a nice guy, and he taught me a lot about the internet. I had no idea because I didn't even have email at that point. He set up my email, and he got me all used to the internet. Back in 2000, it was brand new. I think he started working for us in 99, actually. So he showed me, hey, you can upload, like if you draw a cartoon, I can put it on the internet, and you can put podcast pictures up. He didn't tell me about podcasts yet. That would take a while to learn about that. But Norm knew some people that I knew from my childhood that I had no idea how they got connected. Apparently, the parents of someone that used to live next door to me back when I lived in a completely different area, like closer to LA, he apparently knew the parents of this kid that lived next door and used to play bridge with them. Completely randomly knew them just out of the blue. And one time he freaked me out because he called out something that only that friend of mine would know. And I'm like, and this is before the internet, the prevalence of the internet. And I said, how did you know that? He goes, well, I know your friend's mom, Barbara. Oh, okay. So Norm was a staunch Republican. And when this whole thing went down with George Bush in 2000 is what that year was. When the whole thing went down with the election, he's like, Al Gore just needs to say he lost and move on. Quit counting votes, just say he lost and move on. And he was all about saying how Al Gore was causing the country to be in a state of calamity. The longer that Al Gore disputed the election and didn't just give it to George W. Bush, the more the country was going to fall apart, and that that Al Gore was unpatriotic. I remember him saying that. Now, in hindsight, when I see videos of Al Gore in that time period, I kind of go, he wasn't the best candidate. was not that excited about him. And maybe in future years, 10 years from now or so, 20 years from now, I'll look at Joe Biden and go, But let's just say Norm was like, come on, let's just have him. And then in that case, George W. Bush did become our president. Will this be the same thing with Trump? It's completely different. They've basically every major news source has said that Joe Biden is our president. And this has been, it shows no signs of going to Trump. So we'll see. But it is an interesting time. And I want you to just say, if you do feel that this is some kind of weird conspiracy thing, that you have to take that energy and don't put it towards hurting people, but put it towards gaining more knowledge, and go to knowledge sources other than just the ones that are feeding you the conspiracy theories. Listen to both sides of the story. Be an open-minded individual. I think in times like these, we need to be as open-minded as possible. And I want to know. I'm interested in what Giuliani has to say. I'm a little bit with him, but okay, I'm interested to hear what he has to say. I'm interested to hear what the conservative talk show hosts say. But if it's all behind a wall of conspiracy, then it's wasting all of our time. Give me facts. Give me actual evidence. And I'll listen to that. So it's a time for listening is what I'm saying. And I hope, we did get through 2000. 2001 was, as we found out later, the awful, awful year. But I hope that's not what the case is for 2021, because 2020 was not a good year. Yes, I want to think positive that we got through our 2001 this year. We got that out of the way, hopefully. This year was 2000 and 2001 combined. But here you go. I brought you another podcast. It's actually daily. It's actually living up to its name, and I'm happy about that. Look who's outside a cafe anyway. Hi, Mark. It's Benita the Rodeo Queen. How y'all doing?
It's a disgruntled fiddle player. Tell you what.
What?
I think this terrible election was a sham and was run by some Hollywood producer, and it is completely a lie. And that Trump did win, and he won by the most votes ever.
And you have what facts to back that up?
There are facts everywhere. You just decided to listen to the left-wing wingnut media, and you ain't listening to the truth. How much longer is Anderson Cooper gonna lead you by the nose, Mike? You gotta listen to facts.
All right. And does Steve Bannon have those facts for me?
Maybe.
Okay, and look who else is here.
Hello, Mike. I make the least through your hair
Are you okay?
Yeah.
I'm going to have some right now. Oh, that's good stuff. Thank you for not threatening to cut me.
All right. I'm going to cut you.
No, don't do that. Let's all try and listen to each other and love each other and not cut each other. Next show, it'll be the wonderful Madame Rootabega, Valentino, and Bison Bentley. Thank you for listening. Say hi to your friendly pet cow, Kowtow.
Mike's Daily Podcast is written and produced and performed by Mike Matthews. His podcast is super easy to find. Download or listen to his show and read his blog at mikesdailypodcast.com. Email Mike now at mikesdailypodcast@gmail.com. See you tomorrow. Bye.
And you can tell me what you think at 336mm Daily. That's 3 + 3 = 6mm. As in Mike Matthews Daily, as in what this podcast tries to be. 336-663-2459. And you can also reach to me, out to me, into me. No, don't reach into me. But you can. MikesDailyPodcast.com.